Good afternoon and welcome back, everyone. This afternoon, we're going to be talking about Top Chef. Just watched the latest episode. I'm going to be in trouble with the wife because she likes to watch it with me, but I had to watch it ahead to do these. So feel my pain when she yells at me later on this evening when she gets home from work. All right, so we are going to jump right into it. We're going to take a quick look at this week's episode. Episode 2 this week called "Living the High Life." Basically, they're trying to highlight Wisconsin, like we talked about last week. They're going to be trying to highlight Wisconsin and kind of all of its things, which is always beer and cheese and pretzels. We'll see some of those elements this week. This week's guest judge was Joe Flam. He is a previous season's winner. We've seen him on Top Chef before. I think they said he was the Colorado winner. I lose track of who was in what season. After a while, sometimes they come back and do all-star seasons and those types of things. So I lose a little bit track of kind of who was when. But I think he said he was in the Colorado season winner. Big personality, fun guy, really kind of enjoyable to watch. He had really good chemistry with him and Kristen. I would watch a road show of those two just going somewhere, eating food and just having a good time. So really kind of enjoyed his presence this week. So standard kind of Top Chef this week in terms of the breakdown. So we're going to have our quick fires, our elimination, and then last chance kitchen is how we'll work through these basically kind of in chronological order. So we're going to start off with the quick fire. That's where the episode opened. This week's challenge was to cook with hops, which is what goes into making beer. Typically with these types of things, it's always stuff that people maybe haven't used before. It's always kind of weird. One chef said they had used it before. Kristen asked them to raise their hands. Only one person did. But then when they were going through later while they were actually cooking, another person said that they had, a couple other said they had used it before in open kind of beer restaurants. So it wasn't completely foreign, but out of the 14 people that were there, obviously only 2 or 3 of them had actually used them before. But basically, they were asked to incorporate that into some type of dish. Usually with the quick fires, the dishes are smaller, like an appetizer or a salad type situation. All of the thing that kind of stuck out to me was all of them were commenting about how bitter the hops were. So you're kind of working against that flavor. You can either embrace it or you can kind of work against it and kind of mellow it out. Just kind of depends on which way you want to go with those. We saw chefs kind of go both ways with them. Also, funnily, almost all of them commented about how much it smelled like weed when they were actually cooking it. So just kind of amusing, but that's kind of the way that it's going to smell or taste when you are cooking it. Had a bunch of different people doing a bunch of different stuff. I'm not going to go through kind of everything there. They had a top 3. My girl, Michelle, who's our barbecue pit master, she was in the top 3. She had actually had grilled off some strawberries to kind of offset that bitterness, which got her in the top 3. The winner was a lady named Laura. She made a rice pudding. She was one of them that said that she had opened a beer restaurant before, and this rice pudding was something that she'd made in her restaurant regularly. So it was kind of an easy kind of combination for her. Typically in these types of situations, it's what they're comfortable with. If this is something that they can kind of bend or flex to get their things that they're used to doing, into something that they're comfortable with. Typically, you'll see those kind of stand out. It's a familiarity thing where it's something that they really haven't used before. They really kind of don't know what to do with it. You see them kind of tasting it and trying things out. That's really where you're going to have kind of the experimentation. Usually, that you'll see those folks down towards what they call down towards the bottom, unless lightning strikes in there. But that's basically the way that played out. I believe the lady got $5,000. Laura got $5,000 for winning that one. That's what their kind of their trade-off was. So instead of getting a immunity this week, they will get some cash in the quick fires. Next up will be the elimination challenge in there. A couple of different elements in here with these. So the challenge was they were divided into teams. There was a red team and a yellow team. They had to do their famous drawing knives thing. That's challenge 1. Challenge 2 was they then had to take a bar snack, a salty bar snack, and create a 7-course progressive meal with 7 different stacks. And there's 14 chefs left, so they divided them in 2. Each team has 7. Each person was responsible for 1 course in the progression. On top of that, though, they also made a budget challenge. They only had $500 for the entire team to make the whole meal. So budget challenges are always challenging, and team challenges are always have that extra curveball, especially if you've got pooled money like that. Then usually somebody ends up having to adapt or change or give in or give up an ingredient to make the budget work in there. So in fact, we saw this with both teams. Is one group said everybody has their own money and they all kind of went off their own ways, and then the other team kind of shopped in kind of small, I think clusters of 3 and 4, just to make sure that if they had common ingredients, they weren't buying those things twice. Where the other team where everybody's kind of doing their own thing, they said they'd work it out at the cash register. I would probably say working in the groups and making and kind of shopping together to make sure that you're not double buying anything and there's no kind of fights over stuff. I'd say that's better to do that while you're shopping rather than doing that at the register. That's from an observer standpoint, that always seems to work out better to me watching these shows. Personally, I probably would go the other way and just be like, I'm going to buy my own crap and we'll figure it out later. But what works for them is what works for them. So basically both teams go out, they get their food, they come back, we see them cooking, we see them going through, they all kind of talk about what they want, what they're going to make. Olives, pretzels, there were some roasted corn kernels, some kind of roasted corn snack. I wasn't really kind of familiar with that one, but there are a lot of kind of different kind of salty snacks that they were asked to use. And again, 7 courses, one for each of the chefs. Again, we're not going to get into the nitty gritty of the cooking with those, but basically they were, like I said, they were divided up into 2 teams. The yellow team was the one that ended up winning, despite the fact that the yellow team the entire time while they were cooking and then even at judges' table said that the red team's food looked better on the plate. Their plates were prettier. They were nicer looking. So they were actually not expecting to win. So it was kind of a surprise to them that they actually pulled it off. But their food ended up coming out tasting very, very good. Basically, the 2 highlights, Manny, our winner from last week, he pulled mixed nuts, and then he put that into a mole. Nuts evidently are a big thing into moles. And so he kind of folded that in there quite easily. He said he wanted to kind of highlight his cuisine and his culture. So again, like I said, if it's something that you're used to using and can bend in there quickly, usually you'll do pretty well, and that's what the case with him. And then there's a lady named Rasika. I'm not quite sure how to say her name. They said it a couple of times throughout the episode. I apologize for not knowing how to say her name properly. She also had a dessert made with some type of nut as well. She had a little bit of kind of hairy situation at the end. The stuff wasn't freezing. She actually ended up having to use some liquid nitrogen to freeze it. Said it was the first time she had used liquid nitrogen before. But liquid nitrogen, for folks who don't know, if you haven't been to the N7, I'm not even sure if they're still open, over at the Betplex, they make liquid nitrogen ice cream there. Basically what it is, it's a liquid, but it boils at like negative 300 degrees or something crazy like that. So it freezes things. So if you see like frozen berries or things like that, that's really kind of what it does. So basically it's kind of a quick freezing kind of component. She basically used that to freeze her gremolata that she wanted to put in there. He actually ended up getting the win and the immunity with that. It was a creative dish, and even Tom had mentioned while they were talking about it, that was not a dish that you would probably create, out of your own brain. It was kind of a creation based upon the forcing of the conditions of this challenge. And sometimes wild stuff happens like that. So that's basically kind of what happened with that. The thing that we got out of that was Manny being top 2 this week, and after winning next week, I think he's probably going to be somebody we need to keep an eye on for this entire time. Seems to have those Latin flavors, Hispanic flavors down really well. Looks like he's a force to be reckoned with going forward. So he might be our odds-on favorite, at least at this point, going forward. The other team, the red team, they were on bottom. They didn't come off quite as well. Basically, 3 people from over there had kind of their bottom 3 dishes. Kevin, Charlie, and Valentine. Kevin is evidently somebody who has competed in a foreign Top Chef before. I don't remember what country. I think it might have been France, but he has competed in this before. He basically did an olive course right up front. It was super salty. Everybody talked about how salty it was. Kristen even asked him right at the table. She's like, "Did you do anything to try and mitigate the salt on these olives?" And he said no. So it ended up kind of being a punch of salt in the mouth, and nobody really kind of liked that. Next gentleman up was named Charlie. He does a lot of Haitian food. They said his fish, he had some undercooked fish, and it was kind of bland, wasn't seasoned well enough, didn't have enough salt on things. You'll hear that a lot kind of in these competition shows, that things are bland or not seasoned or don't carry enough salt. That's a typical kind of, they consider it a rookie mistake. For home cooks, that's not, that's usually kind of a thing that people don't lean into. They expect their food to be too salty, but salt actually makes food taste more like itself, is what they say. So basically, if you think something is bland, you need to up the salt levels on there. So that was kind of his big kind of sin. And then the other gentleman who was in the bottom, his name is Valentine. He's the guy with the big beard. Big beard, big personality. I kind of really liked him a lot. Unfortunately, he was the gentleman to go home. He cooked a corn soup dish. That was the roasted corn nuts that I wasn't really familiar with that I talked about earlier. He tried to do that, and his soup ended up being too thick. They kept calling it like a sauce. Now, obviously, we're not tasting the food. It's hard to tell that kind of consistency just watching somebody eat it out of a bowl. But really, they felt like the consistency wasn't great with that. So he was eliminated. So that brings us to the end of the episode proper. From there, then you go to what's called Last Chance Kitchen. Now, depending upon what provider that you get this from, now I buy all of the episodes through Apple, through iTunes, and they don't include Last Chance Kitchen in the purchase. I think Amazon does. And then if you watch it just stream it on Peacock the next day, I think it's included in there, but I don't like watching commercials, so I will pay for it to avoid the commercials. But that means that I have to go to YouTube to watch Last Chance Kitchen, which is annoying, and it's fine. It's fine, but it can be annoying. It can have spoilers too, as well. A lot of times the Last Chance Kitchen will be some type of variation of a theme of what they had. So for this week's challenge, the challenge was to take low-end ingredients and make them elevated. And then in Last Chance Kitchen, they flipped that on the head and they gave them fancy ingredients and asked them to make a comfort dish. Sometimes in Last Chance Kitchen, if somebody goes out on, say, a tomato dish, then the challenge would be to make some type of tomato dish, something like that. So it just kind of depends, but usually there's a theme that ties in with the main episode. Change this year, they actually have a 16th competitor waiting in the wings. A gentleman named Su An is there, and he's going to compete through Last Chance Kitchen. So if he wants to enter in the main competition, he has to win 5 times in Last Chance Kitchen, and then he gets to enter the main competition. I kind of like it because it's kind of the curveball. They're not expecting to see him, so they won't know kind of what he's about until they walk into Last Chance Kitchen. And if he does manage to fight his way back into the main competition, then they won't know anything about him once he gets there. So it's a little bit of an element of surprise. I kind of like it. It's a nice little curveball there. For me, though, Valentine went right in there. He went right up against Sue. The hack guy that got eliminated from last week, he isn't there. They didn't make mention of him at all. So I don't know if he just went back to his regular job because he was basically kind of part of a two-man show restaurant, so he had to go back to work afterwards, or if he was just eliminated last week. They really didn't kind of make that clear. So I'm not really kind of sure what happened to him, but he didn't show up. Typically, once they've been eliminated in Last Chance Kitchen, they'll put them on a stool, and they're the ones that are kind of encouraging folks and asking them what they're making. The eliminated contestants are. So it was kind of curious not to see him there, or at least have a chance to kind of fight it out with Sue. Sue also mentions, as they give kind of his backstory, that he was a former pro golfer. I hadn't heard of him, but I'm not big into golf over there on that side. I'll just have to see if he ever played in the JDC. All right. So like I said, basically the Last Chance Kitchen challenge was to they had brought out a plate or a table full of high-end ingredients. There was lobster, caviar, a couple of other things. I can't remember what else. Basically, to make a comfort dish out of that. That needed to go with a beer that we actually got to see Tom kind of drinking as they go through there. So Valentine made a lobster bake. So he took the lobster, he threw that in there with some andouille sausage, some potatoes, some corn. If you've ever been to a crab boil, same kind of concept, but except that he used the high-end lobster. Sue made like fish and chips, but he used lobster in place of his fish. He beer batted, and then he also used some type of rice pearls. It was something that I hadn't seen before, where basically after you bread them and then you roll them in the rice pearls, and the rice pearls will stay crispy and they don't get like greasy and stuff like you normally do when you get fried fish. He also didn't bother to take the time to make like French fries or chips. He actually just took some rice noodles, fried those in the fryer. They puff up and basically became his chips. End of that. Basically, in Last Chance Kitchen, you're only cooking for Tom. So it's basically Tom's decision whether you stay or go. He tastes both plates of food, and he kind of tells them what he likes and what he doesn't. Ultimately, he makes a call. This week, he decided that Sue wins, probably to help with the drama a little bit. I wouldn't be surprised if Sue doesn't make it. I would be very surprised if Sue doesn't make it into the main competition just because they added that curveball. But they're usually pretty fair in terms of their judging with these. So, like I said, he needs to win 5 times. Now he only needs to win 4 to get back into the main competition. And then he'll face off again against whoever is eliminated next week. Valentine gets to sit on the sidelines and kind of watch from here. But that's basically the way that this shakes out. Next week, we'll be back. It looks like Carla Hall will be our guest judge, another former Top Chef competitor. You might have seen her on not Good Morning America. She's on The Chew on ABC. So you may have seen her running around before. She also does some stuff on Food Network for like the Halloween challenge and those types of things. Big personality, very fun. Very fun lady. So that's kind of what we're looking at next week. This week's episode, I kind of liked it. Like the judges didn't feel like they had brought a ton of creativity. I liked a lot of the stuff, but again, it's hard to tell without tasting the food, without being kind of wowed by the creativity. It was a lot of stuff that I wasn't familiar with and kind of small portions, and I wanted to see them. It's tough to do with bar food, and to make those things elevated. I would have liked to see something a little different. I don't know what I would have done with this challenge. I probably would have went for the pickles or the olive, something salty, and then tried to make something out of that. I think Manny going with that mole was a good way to go. I probably would have went with the protein and tried to mix something salty in there, but that's just me. All right, so that is my look at this week. Like I said, I'll be back next week, probably Thursday or Friday, depending upon how circumstances roll. Other than that, thanks everyone for watching. Make sure that you follow, like, and subscribe. Click on the notification bell if you want to get notified from when our stuff goes out. Other than that, I will see you next time. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.